Today is a fateful date in Germany's history. November 9, 1938, when violent hatred towards Jews erupted on the streets. The pogroms, which were previously known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, it's a reference to the many Jewish-owned shops destroyed by the Nazis, foreshadowed much worse to come. With antisemitism on the rise in many countries, today's commemorations have a particularly strong resonance.
November 9th, 1938, a turning point in German history when hatred towards Jews took a further turn into systemic violence. By 1938, the Nazis had been in power for 5 years. They relentlessly persecuted Jews and excluded them systematically from society, barred them from working, boycotted their stores.
What led to the November pogroms was the general mood and, above all, the German Reich's great interest in Jewish assets. Jews could be pressured into leaving the country, emigrating and transferring their assets to the German Reich.
On November 7th in Paris, a desperate young Polish Jew had shot a German diplomat. The diplomat died on November 9th. The Nazis were in uproar and used this news as an opportunity to unleash a wave of violence against Jews.
There was obviously a plan within the Nazi leadership to stage the whole thing as stemming from anger within the population. So they didn't want to give the order for pogroms, but if there were riots, there was no need to counter them.
The November pogroms saw 1,400 synagogues torched and vandalized, and over 7,000 Jewish homes, schools and businesses destroyed. Some 1,500 people were killed or died in the aftermath.
A service to remember the anti-Jewish pogroms of November 1938 has been held at a synagogue here in Berlin.
Commemorating one of the worst nights in German history that led to the slaughter of 6 million European Jews during the Second World War. This anniversary comes at a time when many Jews feel threatened in Germany since the latest escalation in the Israel-Hamas conflict. In a synagogue that was recently attacked with Molotov cocktails, the president of Germany's Central Council of Jews issued a warning.
There are parallels between the mentality of radical Islamists who want the extermination of Israel and the Jews, and those on the far right who despise our culture of Holocaust remembrance.
The Chancellor said he's outraged and deeply ashamed by rising anti-Semitic sentiment in Germany, given the weight of the country's historical crimes.
Essentially, this is about keeping the promise given again and again in the decades since 1945. The promise on which our democratic Germany is founded. The promise never again. We must honor this promise right now, not just in words, but above all, in our actions.
For Germany, the past is always present, as is its commitment to protecting Jewish life in society.
Let's pick up that point with DW Shani Razanis, who watched this morning's ceremony. Welcome back to the studio, Shani. Did this year's ceremony feel different? This is something that is commemorated every year.
Correct, but this year it was overshadowed by the Hamas attack, obviously. It's not just a symbolism of that. I mean, the very synagogue, as Scholz was saying, the very synagogue this ceremony was taking place at was attacked a couple of weeks ago by Molotov cocktails thrown at it. But it's also a deeper fear. If you talk to Jews in Germany, if you talk to Jews around the world, the media have shown a lot of that. There's great anxiety, the fear of real fear for their own lives, which is something we don't usually, I mean, there's always fear of the rise of anti-Semitism. It seems like this year it's happening under real threat, with people really feeling it's worse than ever before.
And the whole of the German political establishment was there. What stood out for you from those speeches?
Well, of course, the strong standing behind anti-Semitism and seeing it, condemning it as something not acceptable is, of course, important. The symbolism behind it is very meaningful to the Jewish community that is very much frightened. But at the same time, it's interesting to see them try to strike a chord of understanding that we stand behind Israel, we stand with the right values of a modern society, a democratic society that does not allow anti-Semitism in, but we need to allow freedom of speech. We need to also allow and understand the grief connected to both communities that are here on the table. And in general, we look at the discourse now in Germany. We need to make the difference between what's happening in Israel and anti-Semitism, and the ability to be able to speak, even in a critical way, if needed, on what the events in Israel and in Gaza, but then at the same time acknowledging the real fear and the real danger of the rise of anti-Semitism in Germany today. It's coming usually from the extreme right, but also we've seen it now coming from the left and other communities, mostly the Muslim community. It's something to notice, the differences, but then the general tone as well.
And a quick word about changing sensibilities, because this date, November the 9th, used to be known as a commemoration of Kristallnacht in Germany, and in English, the Night of Broken Glass. Now it's referred to as the anniversary of the November Pogroms. What's behind the name change? Well,
there's been the feeling that the term Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, which is to name the damage left after the looters and the masses have attacked Jewish institutions and houses. It felt like it was a euphemism that only describes a very tiny part of the magnitude of that day. It was also considered to be a term coined by the Nazis. So they need to turn it into a Pogromnacht. A pogrom is a term that's actually coming from Russian into the language to describe exactly that, the rioting, the masses, the violent rioting at a point of trying to bring certain ethnic groups into danger. The feeling was that giving it the Pogromnacht name will give it a bit more of an accurate description of the real horrors that happened. We are talking about over 1,400 synagogues who were damaged, over around 1,300 Jews who were killed during the night or after, considering they're being hurt and so on. So the feeling was there needs to be a term that is a bit more giving a better grasp of the event, even though it's been a controversial move to change it.
OK, thank you for that. Shani Rosanis, thank you.